Hey everyone, Delph here. Today I'm going to cover scrolls in Oblivion and how they can be used to beat the game, even on max difficulty. First off, I do have to say this will involve the use of a major glitch. However, this glitch in question, item duping, is used in some of the speedrun categories for the game as well. So if you wanted, to speedrun Oblivion on max difficulty without an out-of-bounds glitch, you could do it the way that I described. This glitch can also be used to duplicate any item you like, so I do think it's my duty to explain this glitch and what it can do for you. For your race, you want to start as High Elf because they are the best race for just running through and skipping the tutorial. You are allowed to change your race, star sign, and class before you leave the tutorial, so if you want to play one of the bad races that can't beat the tutorial, starting as a High Elf is the easiest way to do it. A great example of a bad race is Imperial, but it does come with a free charm spell, which is kind of nice for our purposes. For burst sign, Atronach is convenient and might save you from an enemy spell, but you truly could probably get away with any burst sign as you wish. Same for class. Your skills don't really matter, except that you have to level up one time. So you do want exactly one skill that you could very easily level up. So maybe Conjuration or Alteration would be optimal, but I instead took Light Armor and then bought skill training in Breville. Lockpicking also could prove useful, and Athletics might help you move just a tiny bit faster. Onto the actual dupe. To begin, you'll need at least 2 copies of the same scroll, although the scroll itself doesn't matter. The easiest and most consistent way to get a bunch of these is via the Bravil Mages Guild quest. Just take the quest and then use your racial to charm Volanero, and then when you talk to Kudai again, you'll have 4 total copies of the charm scroll. You will also need another kind of scroll. I recommend either the Flashbolt or Chameleon scroll, which can be looted off of a goblin near the beginning of the tutorial. The method itself is fairly simple, and it presumably utilizes an oversight in the game's code, since scrolls happen to exist both in the items menu and the spells menu at the same time. So go to the items menu, mouse over and select the stack of 2 or more scrolls, and then navigate to whatever item you want without letting your cursor glide over any other items. So slide it off the menu, whatever it takes, then hover your cursor over the item that you do want to duplicate, and then drop it. Copies should then scatter all over the floor. Now, this is why having 4 scrolls to start is nice, because that means you will be able to turn one item into 4 items. You'll note that with more than one scroll, they often will not be successfully duped. So if you have 4 of one scroll and 2 of the other, that may not work. To get around this, just drop scrolls until you have 1, and then repeat the process. By the time you get around to having 30 or more scrolls, sometimes multiple scrolls will successfully duplicate. When you get around to a stack of scrolls in the 50 to 100 range, it will basically always work as long as it's significantly less, although any more than about 50 to 100 scrolls for a stack is essentially overkill. Scrolls of course have weight, and you can always just dupe whenever you feel like it, so there's really no reason to duplicate a stack of 200 of anything, really. Now all you need is a ton of gold. Gold can be made in a variety of ways, but for this we'll go over a way that can be used to farm gold without duping. That is, of course, at Fort Farragut, on the road heading east out of Cheydinhal. There's a hollow tree just northwest of the main door that can be lockpicked. Inside is a barrel with a very hard lock that can be picked to gain 10 poisoned apples, which can be sold for a good amount of money. You can, of course, dupe lockpicks, so no need to worry about actually picking the locks either. Just spam the auto attempt button. The poisoned apples can, of course, also be duped as well, or you can come back every 3 days to get more if you need more gold. But of course, since you can dupe scrolls, harvesting these may not be strictly necessary, but it is maybe useful on another type of character. I just never got around to showcasing it. Okay, next I'm going to go over all the broken scrolls you can buy from book vendors across Cyrodiil. Note that all of these scrolls weigh a whopping 1 point, which is much higher than ordinary scrolls. First up is the Document of Puerile Banter, which can be bought from the 1st edition books in the Imperial City Market District. This scroll drains your personality and speechcraft by 50 points, but also fortifies your endurance and willpower by 50 points. At level 1 and 2, this will roughly double your health pool, so a good idea in case you get damaged, but probably unnecessary overall. Next is the Stormrider Scroll, which can be bought at Renoir's books in Coral. It deals 100 points of shock damage in an area, and gives you 100 points of resist shock for 5 seconds. This can one-shot many enemies at level 1 and 2, and the shock damage is especially nice against Daedra enemies who tend to be weak to shock. Next is the Annal of the Fire Nexus, which can be bought from Southern books in Leyawiin. Similar to the Stormrider Scroll, except in the fire element, it both deals considerable fire damage in an area, and also grants fire immunity. Most undead are weak to fire, so this is your preferred option against them, although realistically, you probably only need one or the other between this one and the shock scroll, and not really both. One last scroll is the Chronicle of Sacrifice, available from Machna's books in Cheydinhal. This one shoots a fireball instead of being untouched like the other scrolls. Unfortunately, it also drains your attributes, which could cause you to become over-encumbered. So not at all necessary or even really useful, but it is a ranged attack, I guess, if you want that. Now, of course, we can also dupe potions, at least the game's default or built-in potions. I recommend heading to the Gilded Carafe in the Imperial City and getting your hands on strong healing potions, and a strong spell absorption potion as well, and you can of course dupe these as necessary. We can also dupe invisibility potions just to skip most enemies if we want. I had a tougher time getting one of these. Luckily a weak one was available in the Bravo Mages Guild. It only lasts 15 seconds, but of course we can dupe as many as we like, and unfortunately we will probably need these sooner or later. You could make do without them for a while, but for the end of the game they are basically a necessity, and even in the short term they are pretty convenient. One last potion type you should strongly consider is a feather potion, just to increase how many potions and scrolls you can carry. I got a strong one in the Cheydinhal Mages Guild. Okay, we've basically got all the tools we need. It is pretty funny to invisibility up to an enemy or even a group of them and one-shot them all with a single scroll. If you bind the scroll to a hotkey, however, it will deselect that scroll each time you use one, which is annoying, but you will get used to it. This strategy begins to weaken considerably in the second half of the main quest, when enemies like Undead Blades take more than one scroll. It's even worse for endgame Daedra enemies such as Clanfear Runts, or in the Great Gate itself, where some enemies can take 3 or more scrolls just to kill them. This is why invisibility is probably necessary, although with the bonus health from the Puerile Banter Scroll and healing potions you may be able to do it without invisibility potions, but it would be much harder and slower. One last topic is of course enemies with spell reflection. Despite the fact that the on-touch scroll grants resistance to fire or shock, I think that applies after you actually damage the opponent, so you can still one-shot yourself with a reflected scroll. This is really only an issue in 2 places. The first is with Martin at the Great Gate. If he is caught in one of your AoE spells, he can reflect that, and also of course against Mankar Cameron. But he proved less of an issue than I thought he would. One thing to note about him is that the wiki says he is weaker to fire than he is to shock, so you'd want to be using the fire scroll against him, I think, although probably either would work just fine, as long as you were going invisible between each scroll cast. Oh yeah, and of course a great time to use a strong spell absorption potion as well, just in case. Okay, and that's Oblivion at max difficulty, basically speedran with the dupe glitch and scrolls. My total playtime was around 3 hours, which is pretty slow for a speedrun, but if you are interested in running the game on max difficulty without wrong warps or out of bounds or whatever they use, this would be your ticket, I think. And overall, I think it's pretty cool that it's possible, and that the game provisions you for it. Lastly, of course, I'd like to thank Akiss Herseg, Schneller Herring, and the Old Knight. All of these YouTubers were an invaluable resource to teaching me about this game. And of course, the fandom and UESP wikis, which are also indispensable. Thanks for watching.